Okay guys, so in this video we will be discussing about what exactly is the Kubernetes architecture. So basically the Kubernetes is used to orchestrate multiple containers in on scale. So for example, and one of the main features of Kubernetes is that it is used to automatically scale the pods and also rollbacks, and it also helps in storage, managing the storage of that particular pod's data, and automatic rollbacks, deployments, and so on. And this is basically used for the microservice based application architectures. Okay, so now let's come back to the Kubernetes architecture. So basically, Kubernetes architecture has two main components, that is the master node and the worker nodes. So as you can see in the master node, we have multiple subcomponents. So the first one being the Kube API server. The Kube API server is basically it is that component exists to expose the Kubernetes cluster to the end users, so that the end users can you know so they can deploy the run the YAML scripts, run the commands to deploy certain pods or services through YAML scripts and the kubectl commands. The second component is the etcd. Etcd basically stores the entire data of the Kubernetes cluster in the form of key value pairs. Second is the kube control manager. So the kube control manager um, the kube control manager basically helps in maintaining the health checks of every node, every pod, and also the endpoints of the services. So let's say that if a particular node is down, and so that node needs to be brought back up because it is performing, it is running certain containers. So in order to support that, in order to check the health status of each node, the kube control manager is used, and the kube control manager also helps in maintaining the it's also used in health checks of the pods running in those nodes. In case if certain pods crashes or if it stops working, with the help of a replica set, it'll send the instructions to the kube scheduler, so that the kube scheduler receive those instructions, and it is going to redeploy and restart those containers, so that it brings up the high availability of that particular application. So this is the um, components of the master node. Okay, now let's come back to the worker nodes. Also, I forgot to mention, both the worker nodes and the master nodes will have a container runtime, for example Docker. So both the containers, both the master nodes and the worker nodes will have the basic container runtime, because without that we will not be able to run the containers and orchestrate them in the first place. Yeah, so moving on to the next one. The next one would be of worker nodes. So the worker nodes basically helps in handling the application workloads. And how exactly it does it, how it does that, it does through two components, that is the kubectl and the kube proxy. The kubectl of every worker node is communicated with the master node, such that if it receives the instructions on what kind of pod needs to be deployed in which worker node, and if it receives those instructions, it is going to run those set of containers. Sorry, it is going to run those set of pods, and then uh, it'll start. Once the pod starts running, it is going to handle those certain application workloads. That's fine. Kube, the second component is the kube proxy. The kube proxy basically is used to provide the networking for those pods, like the overlay networking of those pods running in that node. So this is the overall architecture of the Kubernetes. And Yeah, also I forgot to mention, when it comes to the cloud managed Kubernetes components, we also have something, another additional component known as Cloud Control Manager. So the Cloud Control Manager runs the cloud specific logic for that managed Kubernetes services. That we'll discuss in the later videos. Yeah, so this is the overall view of the Kubernetes architecture. Thank you.